Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of Unity Prime, watching the stars through the massive window. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his face showed no emotion. Behind him, Ambassador Colin Hayes was talking, but Jake had already made up his mind. "You understand what this means, don't you?" Colin asked. His voice was tired. The man had been negotiating for 3 months straight, trying to prevent a war nobody wanted, but everyone seemed ready to fight. "I do," Jake said simply. "Marriage to an alien princess, living on their world, being a symbol of peace." Colin walked closer. "They'll treat you like you're nothing. The Valorians think humans are weak. They think we're barely worth their time." Jake turned around. He was 32 years old, with brown hair and ordinary features. Nothing about him stood out. He looked like someone you'd pass on the street and forget immediately. "Will it stop the war?" Colin hesitated. "It might." Emperor Thane agreed to the proposal. "But I think he's doing it to humiliate us, to show everyone in the coalition that humans are so desperate for peace that we'll give them whatever they want." "Then it's worth it." The ambassador studied Jake's face, looking for doubt or fear. He found neither. "You were a soldier once. Admiral Sullivan told me you were one of the best. Why did you become a diplomat?" "Because I got tired of fighting," Jake said. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. 3 days later, Jake met Princess Lyra for the first time. The meeting was held in one of Unity Prime's formal conference rooms. The Valorian delegation arrived first, filling the room with their presence. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with violet skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their eyes were solid gold, without pupils, and they moved with the grace of natural predators. Princess Lyra entered last. She wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, deep purple metal that caught the light. Her hair was long and silver, braided in an intricate pattern. She looked at Jake, and her golden eyes were cold. "This is the human?" she asked in perfect English. Her voice carried contempt. "Princess Lyra," Colin said, bowing slightly. "May I present Jake Morrison, representative of humanity?" Jake bowed as well, keeping his movements respectful but not submissive. He'd studied Valorian customs for weeks. Too much deference would make them think he was weak. Too little would be seen as an insult. Lyra walked around him slowly, like a buyer inspecting a purchase. "He's small, weak-looking. No psionic presence at all." She stopped in front of him. "Tell me, human, why would I want to marry you?" "To prevent thousands of deaths," Jake said calmly. "Yours and mine." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're noble? Sacrificing yourself?" "I think war is expensive, in lives, in resources, in futures that will never happen." Jake met her gaze steadily. "If my marriage to you prevents that, then it's a fair trade." "You speak well for a lesser species." Lyra turned to her father's representative, a general named Vax. "Very well. I will accept this arrangement. But know this, human. I do this for my people, not for you. You will live on Valoria Prime. You will follow our customs. And you will never forget that you are there by our mercy." The wedding took place 1 week later. Unity Prime's central hall was transformed for the ceremony, decorated in both human and Valorian styles. Representatives from all 7 coalition species attended, filling the massive space. Jake wore a simple black suit. Lyra wore traditional Valorian wedding armor, silver instead of purple, engraved with the history of her bloodline. The ceremony was brief. A Valorian priest spoke in his native language. Words that Jake had learned meant binding of houses and union for prosperity. When it came time for the vows, Lyra spoke hers in a clear, strong voice. Jake did the same. Neither of them smiled. Admiral Kate Sullivan attended, watching from the human delegation. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She'd known Jake for 10 years, ever since he'd served under her command. After the ceremony, she managed to speak with him privately in a side corridor. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Even now, we could find another way." Jake shook his head. "The Valorians would see it as an insult. We'd be back where we started, except worse. They don't know who you really are, what you've done." Kate's voice was low. "If they knew—" "They won't know," Jake interrupted. "That part of my life is over. I'm just a diplomat now." "You were never just anything, Jake." Kate gripped his shoulder. "Be careful out there, and if things go wrong, if you need extraction, I'll be fine." Jake managed a small smile. "I've survived worse than an unhappy marriage." Kate didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "Good luck." The reception was awkward. Valorian nobles barely acknowledged Jake, and when they did, it was with barely concealed amusement. He heard the whispers, even though they made no effort to hide them. The pet human. The princess's burden. How long until she tires of him? Jake endured it all with quiet dignity. He stood beside Lyra, spoke when spoken to, and showed no reaction to the insults. Lyra herself said nothing to him. When a Valorian lord made a particularly crude joke about their wedding night, she laughed along with the others. The only moment that gave Jake pause was when Emperor Thane approached. The Valorian ruler was massive, even by his species' standards, with scars crossing his face and arms. He looked at Jake the way a scientist might examine an interesting insect. "So you are the one who thinks he can bridge our peoples," Thane said. His voice was deep, resonating in Jake's chest. "I wonder if you understand what you've agreed to. Life on Valoria Prime will not be easy for you, human. My people do not forget that your kind once fired upon our ships." "And your kind destroyed 3 human colonies," Jake replied evenly. "We both have grievances. That's why we need peace." Thane's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect or might have been irritation. "You speak boldly for someone in your position. Perhaps you are not as weak as you appear, or perhaps you are simply foolish." He leaned closer. "My daughter is precious to me. If you cause her any harm, if you embarrass her or our house, there will be consequences. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good." Thane straightened. "Then welcome to the family, human. Try not to disappoint us." That night, Jake and Lyra were given quarters on Unity Prime before their departure to Valoria Prime the next day. The suite had 2 bedrooms. Lyra took the larger one without asking and closed the door without saying goodnight. Jake stood alone in the common area, looking out at the stars. He thought about Kate's words, about his past, about the things he'd done that nobody here knew about. He thought about the path that had led him from battlefields to this moment, married to an alien princess who hated him. He'd told Colin Hayes that he was tired of fighting. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The real reason Jake had become a diplomat was because he'd seen what he was capable of when he fought. He'd seen what he became. And he'd decided that person needed to stay buried. Jake touched his wrist absently, feeling the faint raised lines of scars beneath his sleeve. Old wounds from old battles, reminders of who he'd been. "It's just politics," he said quietly to himself. "Just a role to play. Nothing more." But as he lay down to sleep that night, Jake Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that his past would not stay buried forever. And when it surfaced, he wondered if Princess Lyra and her people were ready for what they would find. Valoria Prime was beautiful in a harsh way. The planet's gravity was stronger than Earth's, and the air was thinner. Jake felt it immediately when he stepped off the transport ship. His legs felt heavy, and each breath required more effort. The Valorians around him moved normally, barely noticing what would exhaust a human within hours. Lyra walked ahead without looking back. She hadn't spoken to him during the entire journey from Unity Prime. Now, as they crossed the landing platform toward the Imperial Palace, she maintained that same cold silence. Jake followed, keeping his breathing steady despite the strain. The palace was enormous, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Towers stretched toward the purple sky, and guards in ceremonial armor lined every corridor. Servants bowed as Lyra passed, but their eyes flickered to Jake with curiosity and poorly hidden disdain. Their quarters were in the eastern wing, a suite of rooms that would have been luxurious by any standard. Lyra's bedroom was twice the size of Jake's. She looked around, her expression unreadable. "You will stay in your room unless I require your presence," she said. It was the first thing she'd said to him in 2 days. "There will be court functions where we must appear together. Otherwise, do not embarrass me by wandering the palace like a lost child." "Understood," Jake said. She finally looked at him directly. "Do you ever feel anger, human, or fear, or anything at all?" "I feel everything. I just don't see the point in showing it." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You think that makes you strong? It makes you weak. My people value honesty. We say what we think. We show what we feel." "Your people also value warriors," Jake said calmly, "and warriors learn to control their emotions in battle. Otherwise, they die." For a moment, something shifted in Lyra's expression. Then it was gone, replaced by cold dismissal. "You were a soldier. I read your basic file. You did nothing impressive. No major victories. No commendations worth noting." She turned away. "Go to your room. I have duties to attend to." Jake went to his room, closed the door, and let himself feel the exhaustion. The gravity was crushing. His legs ached, and his head pounded. But he'd trained in worse conditions. He would adapt. Over the next weeks, a pattern developed. Lyra would summon him for court functions where Valorian nobles treated him like an amusing oddity. They would challenge him to tests of strength, knowing the gravity made every movement harder for him. They would ask him questions designed to humiliate. "Tell us, human, how does it feel to be the weakest person in any room you enter? Can your kind even use weapons? Or do you just surrender when threatened? Has the princess tired of you yet? Perhaps she keeps you as one keeps a pet." Jake answered their questions politely or said nothing at all. He never rose to their provocations. He never showed anger or shame. This seemed to frustrate them more than anything. Lyra watched these interactions with an expression that Jake couldn't read. Sometimes he thought he saw disappointment. She wanted him to fight back, to show some spirit. But Jake had learned long ago that silence was often the strongest weapon. When he wasn't required at court, Jake spent his time in the palace library. It was a massive space filled with data tablets and holographic displays containing thousands of years of Valorian history. The librarian, an elderly Valorian named Kess, was the first person on the planet to treat Jake with something approaching respect. "You read our military history," Kess observed one day, noting what Jake was studying. "I find it interesting. Your people have fought many wars." "We are warriors by nature." Kess settled into a nearby chair. The old Valorian's movements were slow, careful. "But you already know this. You study our tactics, our famous battles. Why?" "To understand," Jake said simply. "You can't know a people without knowing how they fight." Kess made a humming sound. "Wise words from a human. Tell me, Jake Morrison, why do you let the nobles insult you?" "Because their insults don't change anything. Words are just air." "And if they offered violence instead of words?" Jake looked up from the display. "Then I would respond appropriately." Something in his voice made Kess study him more carefully. "Perhaps there is more to you than they see. The young nobles think humans are fragile things, but fragile things do not survive first contact with 7 hostile alien species." After a month on Valoria Prime, Jake had adapted to the gravity. His body was stronger, his lungs more efficient. He moved through the palace with the same quiet ease he'd had on Earth. Lyra noticed, but said nothing. Then came the garden incident. It was afternoon, and Lyra had decided to walk in the palace gardens. Jake accompanied her, maintaining his usual distance. The gardens were beautiful, filled with purple and silver plants that swayed in the breeze. Lyra walked ahead, seemingly lost in thought. Jake noticed the assassin 3 seconds before he struck. The attacker came from above, dropping from a tree with a blade aimed at Lyra's back. He was Valorian, trained, moving with lethal precision. Lyra's guards were too far away. She would die before they could react. Jake moved. He crossed the distance in 2 steps, caught the assassin's wrist, and redirected the blade. The attacker's momentum carried him past Lyra. Jake used that momentum, pulling the assassin off balance and driving him face first into the ground. The blade clattered away. Jake's knee pressed into the attacker's spine, his hand locked around the Valorian's neck in a hold that would snap it with the slightest pressure. Total time, 3 seconds. Lyra spun around, her hand going to her own weapon. The guards rushed forward. They found Jake calmly holding the unconscious assassin, barely breathing hard. "He's alive," Jake said, standing up. "You'll want to question him." The guards stared. One of them, a female warrior named Vera, looked between Jake and the attacker with obvious disbelief. "You moved faster than I've ever seen a human move, and you disabled a trained Valorian warrior in seconds." "He was focused on the princess. He didn't see me." "Most humans would have frozen in fear," Vera said, taking custody of the assassin. "You acted like a trained soldier." "I was a soldier," Jake said. "A long time ago." Lyra hadn't said anything. She was staring at Jake with an expression he couldn't read. The guards took the assassin away, and suddenly they were alone in the garden. "That was not the reaction of a simple soldier," Lyra said quietly. "The way you moved, the hold you used. That was advanced combat training." Jake said nothing. "Who are you really, Jake Morrison?" She stepped closer. "What are you hiding?" "I'm your husband, a diplomat, nothing more." "You're lying." Her golden eyes searched his face. "I saw you. In that moment, you were someone else. Something else." Jake met her gaze steadily. "Would it matter? Would knowing change anything about our situation?" Lyra opened her mouth and closed it. Finally, she turned away. "Come, we should return to the palace. And Jake?" She paused. "Thank you for saving my life." It was the first kind thing she'd said to him. That night, Lyra accessed the restricted human databases. Her position as princess gave her clearance for most coalition files. She searched for Jake Morrison's complete military record. What she found was mostly classified. Black bars covered most of his service history, but there were hints, references to special operations, notations about classified deployment, a single commendation that had been partially redacted, mentioning exceptional valor under conditions of, and then nothing. She dug deeper, using her father's access codes. She found mentions of something called Ghost Unit, a special forces team that operated in complete secrecy. No official records, no public acknowledgement, just whispers and rumors among military intelligence, and Jake Morrison's name appeared in connection with it once in a file so classified that even viewing it would be logged and reported. Lyra closed the files quickly. She sat in her darkened room, thinking about the human she'd married, the one who never showed emotion, who endured insults without response. Who moved like death itself when protecting her? What had humanity sent her? And more importantly, why? The next morning, Lyra found Jake in the library as usual. He was reading about the Valorian campaigns against the Zynthian Confederacy. He looked up when she entered. "We need to talk," Lyra said. "About what?" "About who you really are. About what you're hiding." She sat across from him. I tried to access your military records. Most of them are classified. Then you have your answer. I'm no one important. Important people don't need their files classified, Lyra said. Dangerous people do. Jake closed the data tablet. Why does it matter? You made it clear you don't care about me. I'm just a political arrangement. You saved my life yesterday. That makes it matter. Lyra leaned forward. I may not like this marriage, Jake Morrison, but I am not blind. There is more to you than you show, and I think you owe me the truth. They stared at each other across the table. Finally, Jake spoke. I was a soldier. I did things that needed doing. Then I stopped. That's all you need to know. No, Lyra said firmly. That's not enough. Not anymore. The alarms began 3 weeks after the assassination attempt. Jake was in the library when the sound echoed through the palace. It was a deep, pulsing tone that made his chest vibrate. Around him, Valorians moved with sudden urgency, their casual arrogance replaced by military precision. Kess looked up from his work. The war alarm. We are under attack. Jake immediately went to find Lyra. She was already in the palace command center, surrounded by military officers studying holographic displays. The displays showed space combat near the border systems, ships burning, stations going dark, death measured in numbers that climbed higher every second. The Zarathi, one general was saying. His name was Vex, and Jake had seen him at court functions. They hit 3 of our outposts simultaneously, thousands dead. Not just ours, another officer added. She was younger, her armor marked with combat decorations. Reports coming in from human colonies, too. They're attacking everyone. Emperor Thane stood at the center of the room, his massive frame radiating controlled fury. How many ships? At least 40 hive vessels in each attack group, more jumping in every hour. The Zarathi were one of the coalition species, insectoid beings that shared a hive mind. They'd been quiet for decades, keeping to their territory, rarely engaging with other races. This was unprecedented. Lyra saw Jake enter. You shouldn't be here. This is military business. I'm here because you're here, Jake said simply. He moved to where he could see the tactical displays. His eyes swept across the information, processing it automatically. Old habits. The princess is correct, General Vex said. This is not a place for civilians. Then clear the room, Jake said, his voice quiet but cutting through the noise. Everyone stopped talking. He pointed at the display. Because unless I'm reading this wrong, you're about to send your fleet directly into a trap. Vex's face darkened. How dare you? The Zarathi attacked 3 positions, Jake continued, ignoring him. All of them border outposts, lightly defended, easy targets. You're gathering your main fleet here. He indicated a position on the map. To mount a counterattack against their closest hive cluster, yes? That is the obvious response, Thane said, his voice dangerously quiet. What is your point, human? The attacks were bait. They want you to mass your fleet in that position. Jake manipulated the display, showing Zarathi territory. Because while you're there, 3 of your core systems will be undefended, including Valoria Prime. The room went silent. That's speculation, Vex said, but his voice had lost its certainty. It's tactics, Jake replied. The Zarathi hive mind thinks in patterns. They sacrifice small groups to position larger ones. This is what they do. And how would you know this? Vex demanded. What makes a diplomat an expert on Zarathi warfare? Jake didn't answer. He was studying the displays, his mind working through scenarios. He could see it clearly now, the pattern emerging from the chaos. It was elegant in its simplicity, brutal in its efficiency. Emperor Thane walked closer to Jake. Explain your reasoning. The Zarathi don't value individual lives the way we do. They're a hive. Each unit is expendable if it serves the greater strategy. These border attacks, they're sacrificial. The real assault is coming here, to your homeworld, while your military is out of position. Jake looked at Thane directly. If I'm wrong, you lose nothing by keeping your home defenses strong. If I'm right, and you send your fleet away, you lose everything. The Emperor studied Jake for a long moment. Then he turned to his officers. Split the fleet. Half will respond to the border attacks. Half will remain in defensive positions around our core systems. Your Majesty, Vex began. Do it, Thane said. His tone allowed no argument. Then he looked back at Jake. If you are wrong, human, we will discuss your presumption. If you are right, we will discuss your expertise. Over the next 2 days, the Zarathi struck exactly as Jake predicted. A massive hive fleet emerged from dark space directly at Valoria Prime, 50 vessels strong. But the Valorian home fleet was ready. The battle was fierce, but the defenders held. In the war council that followed, Jake stood beside Lyra. She'd insisted he attend. The other officers looked at him differently now, with wary respect instead of contempt. 3 victories, Thane announced. We held the core systems and repelled the Zarathi at the border. Casualties were heavy, but we stand. He looked at Jake. Because of insight provided by our human diplomat. My Emperor, General Vex said carefully. With respect, we must ask how a diplomat knew Zarathi attack patterns better than our military intelligence. A good question, Thane agreed. Jake Morrison, I believe it is time you explained yourself. Your file says you were a soldier, but soldiers do not think like you think. Soldiers do not see what you see. Jake felt Lyra's eyes on him, felt everyone's eyes. He'd known this moment would come eventually. He'd hoped it would be later. I wasn't just a soldier, he said quietly. I commanded a special operations unit. We dealt with threats before they became wars. Our missions were classified. How classified? Thane asked. Classified enough that I can't tell you specifics, even now. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came through the communication system. She was calling from the human fleet positioned near Valorian space. Emperor Thane, this is Admiral Sullivan of the Human Defense Force. I can provide some context if you'll allow it. Speak, Admiral, Thane said. Jake Morrison commanded Ghost Unit, Kate said. They were humanity's first response to existential threats. 53 successful missions across 15 years. No failures. They operated behind enemy lines, in impossible situations with minimal support. She paused. Ghost Unit is why humanity survived first contact with the Coalition. They're why we're still here to have this conversation. The room was completely silent. Jake retired 5 years ago and entered diplomatic service, Kate continued. His tactical knowledge and combat experience are unmatched, but he prefers peace to war. That's why he chose diplomacy. Thane walked slowly around Jake, examining him like he was seeing him for the first time. You were a warrior, a leader, and you hid this from us. Why? Because I'm tired of being that person, Jake said. I've killed enough. I've seen enough friends die. I wanted a different life. And yet, here you stand in a war council providing tactical analysis that saved thousands of lives. Thane stopped in front of him. It seems fate has other plans for you. I gave you analysis, Jake said firmly. Nothing more. The war is yours to fight. The Zarathi won't stop with this defeat, Lyra said. She'd been quiet until now, watching and listening. They'll adapt and attack again. We need to strike their forward command nest, cut off their coordination. A deep strike mission, Vex said, nodding slowly. Behind their lines, hit the command structure directly. Suicide, another general muttered. The nest is protected by 3 fleet groups. Then we send a small force, Lyra said. Fast ships, stealth approach, strike hard and withdraw before they can coordinate a response. Everyone looked at Jake. He felt it, the weight of their expectation. They wanted him to lead it, to be the warrior he used to be. No, Jake said. I'm done with combat missions. Find someone else. There is no one else, Thane said. Not with your experience, not with your success rate. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I understand your desire for peace, Jake Morrison. But sometimes peace must be won through strength. My daughter is right. We need to strike the Zarathi command, and you are the only one here capable of planning and executing such a mission. I said no. Lyra stepped in front of him. You told me that you did things that needed doing. Then you stopped. Why? Because it was hard? Because it hurt? Her golden eyes were fierce. People are dying. Our people. Your people. And you have the power to stop it. But you won't. Because you're afraid of who you'll become. You don't understand. Then help me understand, Lyra challenged. Tell me why the man who saved my life without hesitation won't save thousands more. Jake felt something break inside him. The wall he'd built over 5 years, the distance he'd created between himself and his past. Lyra was right. He was afraid. Not of dying. Not of the enemy. But of finding out that the person he'd tried to leave behind was still there, waiting. If I do this, he said slowly, I lead. No question. No debate. My mission. My rules. Thane nodded. Agreed. And this is the last time. After this, I go back to being a diplomat. No more war councils. No more missions. If you succeed, I will not ask you to fight again, Thane promised. Jake looked at Lyra. You're not coming. Yes, I am, she said immediately. I'm second in command. This is my fight, too. It's too dangerous. I am a Valorian warrior princess, Lyra interrupted, her voice hard. I have fought in 6 campaigns. I have killed enemies in single combat. I will not hide in safety while others risk their lives for my people. She stepped closer. Besides, you're my husband. Where you go, I go. That's what the ceremony meant. Even if neither of us wanted it at the time. Jake saw the determination in her eyes. Arguing would be pointless. Fine, but you follow my orders. All of you. No heroics, no glory-seeking. We go in, complete the mission, and get out. Understood? Understood, Lyra said. Jake turned to the tactical display. Already his mind was working, planning the approach, calculating risks, identifying weaknesses in the Zarathi defensive patterns. It was like putting on an old coat. It fit perfectly, and that terrified him. We'll need a stealth ship, he said. Something fast, and I'll need to handpick the team. 8 operators maximum. Any more and we lose speed and flexibility. You'll have whatever you need, Thane said. As the council began discussing logistics, Lyra moved to stand beside Jake. She spoke quietly, so only he could hear. Thank you for doing this. Don't thank me yet, Jake said. Wait until we come back alive. We will. I trust you. Jake looked at her in surprise. It was the first time she'd said anything like that. Lyra met his gaze steadily, and something passed between them. An understanding. A connection that hadn't existed before. Maybe, Jake thought, this marriage wasn't just politics anymore. The stealth ship was called Shadow Runner, a Valorian vessel designed for deep reconnaissance. It was small, fast, and nearly invisible to most scanning systems. Jake stood in the cargo bay, watching his team prepare their equipment. Lyra had chosen 3 of her best warriors. Vera, the female guard who'd witnessed Jake stopping the assassin. A massive soldier named Cade, who carried weapons that would require 2 humans to lift. And a young scout called Triss, who moved with fluid grace. Jake had requested 4 human operators from Admiral Sullivan. They arrived 6 hours before departure. All of them wore the same expression when they saw Jake. Relief mixed with something like joy. Boss, the first one said. Her name was Lisa Grant, a demolitions expert who'd served with Jake for 8 years. She was small, dark-haired, and could make a bomb from spare parts in under a minute. "We thought you were done with this life." "I was," Jake said. "This is a special case." The others introduced themselves to the Valorians. Ben Carter, a pilot and infiltration specialist, Danny White, a weapons expert and sniper, and Karen Ross, a combat medic and intelligence analyst. The team spent 2 days training together. At first, the Valorians and humans worked separately, each group skeptical of the other. Jake watched this with growing concern. On the second day, he called everyone together in the training room. "We have a problem," he said. "You're acting like 2 separate teams. That's going to get us killed." "They don't trust us," Cade said, gesturing at the humans. "And we don't trust them. That's reality." "Then change reality," Jake said. "Vera, I want you to spar with Lisa. Show each other what you can do." The 2 women looked at each other uncertainly. Then Vera nodded. They moved to the center of the room, circling each other. Vera attacked first, fast and powerful. Lisa dodged, redirected, used Vera's momentum against her. They exchanged techniques, testing each other's limits. After 5 minutes, both were breathing hard. Neither had won, but both were grinning. "You're stronger than you look," Vera said. "You're faster than I expected," Lisa replied. "Good," Jake said. "Now everyone pair up, Valorian with human. Learn from each other. Because in 3 days, we're going into a hive nest where the enemy outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. Our only advantage is working as one unit." The training continued. Jake watched them grow closer, saw the mutual respect developing. But he remained separate, observing, planning, never fully participating. Lyra noticed. On the 3rd night, she found him alone in the ship's observation bay, studying the mission plans. "You train them, but you don't train with them," she said. "I know what I can do. I need to know what they can do." "That's not why." Lyra sat beside him. "You're keeping yourself apart, like you did at the palace." "Why?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "Because if I let myself become that person again, fully, I'm not sure I can come back from it." "What person?" "The one who thinks in terms of acceptable casualties. The one who makes decisions that cost lives. The one who—" He stopped, struggling for words. "When I led Ghost Unit, I was good at it. Too good. I stopped seeing people as people. They became pieces on a board, resources to be used. And the scary part? I didn't hate it. Part of me loved the clarity, the simplicity of it." Lyra was silent, processing this. "You're afraid of losing yourself." "I'm afraid of finding out I never really changed, that I'm still that person underneath." She reached out, hesitating, then placed her hand on his arm. It was the first time she'd voluntarily touched him. "Listen to me, Jake Morrison. The man who led Ghost Unit might have been cold and calculating, but that man retired. He chose peace. He married an alien princess to prevent a war. He endured insults and humiliation without complaint." She squeezed his arm gently. "That man changed. He's still in there. And he's stronger than the soldier ever was." Jake looked at her, seeing something in her golden eyes he hadn't seen before. Understanding, acceptance, maybe even the beginning of affection. "When this is over," he said quietly, "I want to try to make this marriage real, if you're willing." Lyra smiled. It was the first real smile she'd given him. "I think I'd like that." The mission launched at dawn. Shadowrunner slipped away from Valoria Prime, invisible against the stars. The journey to Zarathi territory would take 3 days at maximum speed. During that time, something changed in Jake. He became different. His voice grew harder, his movements more precise. The team noticed it immediately. "The boss is back," Lisa said quietly to Ben. They were checking weapons in the armory. "You can see it in his eyes." In the command deck, Jake was briefing the final approach. "The nest is located on this moon. Atmosphere is thin but breathable. Gravity 0.8 standard." He brought up holographic displays. 3 fleet groups guard the system. We approach from here, using the gas giant's magnetic field to mask our signature. What about ground defenses? Triss asked. Extensive. The Zarathi have dug into the moon's crust. Multiple entrances, all heavily defended. Jake highlighted a location. Except this one. It's a thermal vent system. Natural tunnel that connects to the main nest. Too small for their big warriors, but perfect for us. How do we find the command center once inside? Vera asked. The Zarathi hive mind has a physical nexus. The Queen and her command caste. They'll be at the center, deepest level. We fight our way there, plant charges, and withdraw. Fighting our way through an entire hive? Cade said. Even for 8 of us, that's impossible. Jake's smile was cold. It was the smile of someone who'd done impossible things before. That's why we use their hive mind against them. Karen's been analyzing their communication patterns. We can disrupt their coordination with a viral signal. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. Make them confused. How long will that buy us? Lyra asked. 10 minutes, maybe 15. We'll need to move fast. The approach went perfectly. Shadowrunners slipped past the fleet groups, hidden in the magnetic chaos of the gas giant. They landed on the moon's dark side where sensors wouldn't detect them. The team moved out, carrying weapons and demolition charges. Jake led, his movements fluid and sure. This was what he'd been trained for. This was what he was. The thermal vent was exactly where the maps said it would be. They descended in single file, lights cutting through darkness. The temperature rose as they went deeper. Sweat ran down faces hidden behind helmets. Contact in 10 meters, Karen said, reading her scanner. Multiple Zarathi, small warrior caste. Suppressors on, Jake said. We need to stay quiet as long as possible. They emerged into a chamber carved from stone. 6 Zarathi warriors stood guard, their insectoid bodies gleaming in the dim light. They had 6 legs, 4 arms, and mandibles that could cut through armor. Jake moved first. His weapon made a soft sound, almost apologetic. The first Zarathi dropped, then the second. The team spread out, firing with perfect coordination. In seconds, all 6 were down. Clean, Lisa said approvingly. No alarms. They moved deeper. The nest was a maze of tunnels and chambers. They passed rooms full of eggs, nurseries where young Zarathi grew, feeding areas, storage, all of it eerily quiet except for the constant clicking of the hive mind communicating. We're getting close, Karen said. The command center should be through this passage. That's when the alarm started. A shrieking sound that hurt to hear. Red lights flashed in the tunnels. They found the bodies, Jake said calmly. Karen, activate the signal disruptor. She pressed a button on her device. Immediately, the shrieking became chaotic, confused. They could hear Zarathi in the tunnels around them, moving erratically. Move fast, Jake ordered. We have minutes. They ran. Zarathi warriors appeared from side passages, but they were disorganized, attacking individually instead of in coordinated groups. The team cut through them with brutal efficiency. Lyra fought beside Jake, her energy blade cutting through chitin and flesh. She saw him move, truly move, for the first time. He was incredible. Every motion was perfect. Every shot found its target. He didn't just fight. He controlled the entire battlefield. There, Jake said, pointing ahead. A massive door, organic and pulsing. That's the command chamber. They placed charges on the door and blew it open. Beyond was a cathedral-sized space filled with bioluminescent light. At the center, surrounded by hundreds of smaller Zarathi, was the Queen. She was enormous, 30 feet tall, with intelligence burning in her compound eyes. Plant the charges, Jake ordered. We have 5 minutes. Lisa and Danny moved forward, placing explosive charges at strategic points. The Zarathi defenders recovered from their confusion and attacked in force. The team formed a defensive perimeter, weapons firing continuously. A massive warrior broke through, heading straight for Lisa as she worked. Cade intercepted it, his strength matching the creature's. They grappled, locked together. 3 minutes, Lisa shouted. More Zarathi poured in. Too many. The team was being overwhelmed. Jake saw it happening, saw the pattern shifting toward failure, toward death. He felt something inside him click into place, the old coldness, the calculation. He'd tried to keep it buried, but this was why it existed. "Lyra!" he shouted. "Take command! Get them out!" "What? No!" Jake dropped his rifle and pulled 2 smaller weapons. "I'll hold here. Buy you time. That's an order." He ran forward, directly into the mass of Zarathi. His weapons fired in rhythm, each shot precisely placed. He moved through them like a dancer, never stopping, never hesitating. It was beautiful and terrible. Lyra watched in horror as Jake disappeared into the swarm. "We can't leave him! Charge is set!" Lisa called. 1 minute to detonation! "Go!" Jake's voice came through the comm, strained but steady. "That's an order. I'll be right behind you." Lyra made the hardest decision of her life. Fall back. Everyone out. Move. They ran. Behind them, they could hear weapons fire, the screech of dying Zarathi, and Jake's steady breathing over the comm. The team reached the vent system, started climbing. The charges detonated below, a massive explosion that shook the entire moon. The tunnel began collapsing. "Jake!" Lyra screamed into her comm. "Jake, respond!" Static. Then, "I'm here. Bit busy. Keep moving." They reached Shadow Runner. The ship's engines were already hot. Ben lifted off as the last team member scrambled aboard. "We can't leave him!" Lyra was trying to get back to the airlock. "There!" Vera pointed. In the distance, a figure was running across the moon's surface. Behind him, the nest was collapsing, fire and debris shooting into the sky. Jake reached the ship and jumped. His hands caught the lowered ramp, and the team pulled him inside. The airlock sealed. Shadow Runner accelerated, racing away from the dying hive. In the cargo bay, Jake collapsed against a wall. His armor was damaged, covered in green Zarathi blood. Lyra knelt beside him, pulling off his helmet. His face was pale, covered in sweat, but he was smiling. "Mission successful." "You idiot," Lyra said, tears in her golden eyes. "You could have died, but I didn't." He reached up, touching her face gently. "And now I'm done, really done. No more missions, no more war, just you and me trying to make this work." Lyra kissed him. It was sudden, fierce, filled with all the fear and relief and new feelings she'd been hiding. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. "Yes," she said, "just you and me." The victory celebration on Valoria Prime lasted 3 days. The destruction of the Zarathi command nest had broken their offensive. Without coordination, their fleets withdrew into defensive positions. The war was over, at least for now. Jake spent most of the celebration in medical recovery. The mission had pushed him to his limits. But he was healing, and more importantly, something had changed between him and Lyra. She visited him every day. They talked, really talked, for the first time, about their hopes, their fears, the future they might build together. "I never wanted to marry you," Lyra admitted on the 4th day. They were walking in the palace gardens, the same place where Jake had saved her life. "I thought you were weak. A symbol of my father's willingness to appease lesser species." "And now?" Jake asked. "Now I know better. You're not weak. You're controlled. There's a difference." She took his hand. It felt natural now, not forced. "I'm glad it was you. I'm glad my father chose you. Even though I'm human? Especially because you're human. You showed me that strength isn't just about physical power or psionic ability. It's about choosing when to use your power and when to hold it back." They walked in comfortable silence. Then Jake's communicator chimed. It was Admiral Kate Sullivan, requesting an immediate conference call. Jake's expression grew serious. "Something's wrong," he said. In the Palace Communication Center, they connected with Kate. Her face on the screen looked worried. "Jake, we have a problem. Intelligence has intercepted Zarathi communications. They claim the attack on their command nest was unprovoked aggression." "That's insane," Lyra said. "They attacked us first. 3 outposts. Thousands dead." "I know," Kate said, "but they're taking the matter to the Coalition Grand Assembly. They're demanding sanctions against both Valoria and humanity, and they have support." "From who?" Jake asked, though he already suspected. "The Zynthian Confederacy. Ambassador Krell is arguing that we acted without Coalition approval, that we violated the peace accords." Jake's jaw tightened. The Zynthians were one of the most powerful species in the Coalition. They had natural psionic abilities that could influence minds, read thoughts, and dominate wills. If they were backing the Zarathi claim, this could escalate quickly. "When is the assembly meeting?" Lyra asked. 3 days, at Unity Prime. Your father is going, and human representatives will be there. But Jake..." Kate paused. "They're calling for you specifically. They want the commander of the mission to answer for his actions." "Then I'll go," Jake said. "It might be a trap. The Zynthians could be planning something." "I'll be ready." The journey to Unity Prime was tense. Emperor Thane accompanied them on the royal transport, along with a full security detail. The Emperor had been different toward Jake since the mission, more respectful. He'd even started calling him son, which Lyra said was a significant honor. "The assembly will be hostile," Thane warned during the flight. "The Zynthians have many allies. They will paint us as aggressors." "Let them," Jake said. "The truth is on our side." "Truth and politics are not always the same thing," Thane replied. "Be careful in there. The Zynthians can read surface thoughts. They'll know if you're lying." Jake smiled slightly. "Then I'll tell the truth." Unity Prime was crowded with delegates from all Coalition species. The Grand Assembly Chamber was an enormous space designed to hold thousands. Each species had their designated area. Humans and Valorians sat together, a united front. Ambassador Krell of the Zynthian Confederacy stood at the central podium. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. When he spoke, his voice had a quality that made you want to believe him. "Honored delegates," Krell began, "we are here to discuss a grave violation of Coalition law. The Zarathi Hive, a peaceful member of our community, was attacked without provocation. Their command nest was destroyed, thousands of their people killed. And who is responsible? The humans and Valorians, acting together in secret military operations." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement. "The Zarathi attacked us first," Thane said, standing. "They destroyed our outposts, killed our people." "So you claim," Krell replied smoothly. "But where is your proof? The Coalition requires evidence before sanctioning military action. You provided none. You simply attacked, driven by your warrior pride and humanity's aggressive nature." Jake watched Krell carefully. Something felt wrong. The Zynthians' arguments were too prepared, too smooth, as if he'd known exactly how this would play out. "I called Jake Morrison to the floor," Krell said. "The human who led the attack. Let him explain his actions." Jake stood and walked to the central floor. He could feel thousands of eyes on him. Krell moved closer, his dark eyes studying Jake with intense focus. "Tell us, Commander Morrison," Krell said. "Why did you attack the Zarathi nest?" "Because they started a war," Jake said simply. "They attacked our territories. We defended ourselves." "You defended yourself by attacking their homeworld? By destroying their leadership?" Krell's voice was gentle, understanding. "Come now, surely there was another reason. Perhaps you wanted glory or revenge." Jake felt something brushing against his mind. A gentle pressure, like fingers trying to pry open a locked door. Krell was trying to read his thoughts. To find doubt or guilt or anything he could use, but the pressure stopped at Jake's mental defenses. stopped cold. Krell's eyes widened slightly. Interesting. You seem resistant to basic telepathic inquiry. Tell me, is that a natural human ability? No, Jake said. It's a learned one. Indeed. And what else have you learned, Jake Morrison? What other secrets does humanity hide? More pressure now. Stronger. Krell was pushing hard, trying to break through Jake's defenses. Jake could feel other Xinthians in the chamber joining the effort. 6 of them, their combined psionic power focused on his mind like a laser. They expected him to collapse, to have his thoughts torn open and displayed for everyone to see. Instead, Jake pushed back. The Xinthians gasped. Krell stumbled backward, his dark eyes showing shock. Impossible. Humans don't have psionic abilities. Most don't, Jake agreed. But some of us do. Developed through training and enhancement programs. We've been hiding it because we knew what would happen if you discovered we weren't as weak as you thought. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouting questions, guards moving to defensive positions. Krell's expression had shifted from confidence to something like fear. This is exactly what we feared, Krell said, recovering quickly. Humanity has been lying to the Coalition, hiding their true capabilities. They are a threat. We're not a threat, Jake interrupted. His voice was calm but carried through the chamber. We're a species that learned to survive. When we joined the Coalition, we were the weakest members, barely tolerated, mocked, dismissed. So we adapted. We enhanced ourselves. We developed defenses against species that could control our minds, because we had to. You should have revealed this to the Coalition, another delegate said. Avrelian, one of the founding members. Why? Jake asked. So you could fear us? So you could see us as a threat instead of equals? He looked around the chamber. Every species here has advantages. The Valorians have their strength and telepathy. The Xinthians have their mind control. The Vrelians have their technology. We have nothing except our ability to adapt, to survive. And you want to punish us for that? You violated the peace accords, Krell insisted. You conducted unauthorized military operations. The Zarathi attacked first, Jake said. And you know that. You've known it all along. Krell's eyes narrowed. I know nothing of the sort. You're lying, Jake said flatly. I can tell because you're trying to control everyone's perception right now. I can feel it. You're using your abilities to influence the delegates, to make them doubt us. Absurd, Jake focused, gathering his own psionic ability. It was nothing compared to a Xinthian's natural power. But it was enough. He reached out, not to control, but to reveal, to strip away the subtle manipulation that Krell was weaving. Suddenly, delegates were shaking their heads, looking confused. What just happened? One asked. I felt something was influencing my thoughts. Krell's face went pale. You dare accuse me of manipulation? I don't accuse, Jake said. I demonstrate. He pushed harder, using a technique that Ghost Unit had developed, not to control thoughts, but to force truth. Krell tried to resist, but Jake had spent 15 years fighting telepaths. He knew their weaknesses. Images flashed in the minds of everyone in the chamber, memories pulled from Krell's own thoughts. The Xinthian meeting with Zarathi representatives, planning the attacks on human and Valorian territories, orchestrating the war to weaken their rivals in the Coalition. No! Krell screamed. Stop this! But it was too late. The truth was out. Delegates were standing, shouting. Guards moved toward Krell, who tried to run but was surrounded. Ambassador Krell of the Xinthian Confederacy, the Coalition president said, rising from her seat. She was a Vrelian named Alta, older and wise. You stand accused of manipulating Coalition members and orchestrating unauthorized military conflicts. What do you say to these charges? Krell said nothing. He couldn't deny what everyone had seen in his own memories. Take him into custody, Alta ordered. This assembly is adjourned while we investigate the full extent of this conspiracy." In the chaos that followed, Lyra found Jake. He looked exhausted, drained from the psionic confrontation. "Are you all right?" "I will be," he said. "That took everything I had." Emperor Thane approached, looking at Jake with new respect and something like awe. "You revealed humanity's true capabilities to everyone. The political consequences are necessary," Jake interrupted. "We couldn't hide forever, and we can't build real peace on lies." Admiral Kate Sullivan pushed through the crowd. "Jake, you just changed everything. Every species in the Coalition now knows that humans are more powerful than they appeared." "Good," Jake said. "Maybe now they'll treat us as equals instead of lesser members." Over the next days, the political landscape shifted dramatically. The Xinthian Confederacy was investigated, and evidence of numerous manipulations came to light. Krell had been orchestrating conflicts for years, weakening rival species to maintain Xinthian dominance. The Coalition reformed its charter. New protections were put in place against mental manipulation, and humanity's status changed from probationary member to full partner, recognized as a major power. Emperor Thane made a formal announcement, standing beside Jake and Lyra at a Coalition ceremony. "I once thought humans were weak. I agreed to this marriage to humiliate them, to show their desperation for peace. I was wrong. Humanity is strong, not because of their psionic abilities or their military power, but because they chose to appear weak when they could have been feared. They chose diplomacy over dominance, and that is true strength." The ceremony ended with Thane publicly acknowledging Jake as his son and heir to the alliance between their peoples. It was unprecedented, and it changed everything. That night, Jake and Lyra stood in their quarters on Unity Prime, looking out at the stars. She leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home," Jake said, "to Valoria Prime, and we start our real life together. No more wars? No more wars, I promise. And no more secrets?" Jake smiled. "No more secrets. You know everything now. The good and the bad." Lyra turned to face him. "I love you, Jake Morrison, my strange, powerful, peaceful human husband." "I love you too," he said, and he meant it. They returned to Valoria Prime as heroes. The political marriage that was supposed to be a symbol of human weakness had become something real, something strong. A genuine partnership between two people from different worlds who chose to build a bridge instead of a wall. Jake retired from all military operations permanently. He worked as a senior diplomatic advisor, helping to build the new coalition. But most of his time was spent with Lyra, learning to be a husband instead of a soldier. 6 months later, Lyra announced she was pregnant. The news spread throughout the coalition. The first human Valorian child, a symbol of what different species could create together. Jake stood in the palace gardens one evening, his hand on Lyra's stomach, feeling the small life growing there. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from warrior to diplomat, from enemy to family. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyra asked. "Giving up your old life, the excitement of missions?" Jake shook his head. "I don't miss the fighting. I don't miss the fear or the death or the weight of command. This is what I wanted all along: peace, family, a future worth living." "You're a strange human, Jake Morrison," Lyra said, smiling. "And you're an amazing Valorian," he replied. "I'm glad your father chose me." "So am I." They stood together as the sun set over Valoria Prime, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Two people from different worlds, building something new. Not through war or fear or domination, but through choice, through understanding, through love. And in the end, that was humanity's true power. Not the ability to fight or enhance themselves or resist mental control, but the ability to choose peace when they had the power to wage war, to build bridges when they could have burned them, to love when they could have hated. That was what made them strong. That was what made them human.